evening that began like any other turned tragic today when an employee opened fire on his supervisor and fellow coworkers.
Students, parents, teachers are asking why today after a bloody rampage plunged this campus into tragedy.
Details are just coming in, but we're being told that a heavily armed gunman opened fire this evening at the mall food court behind me. There's no official word on any casualties yet, but one eyewitness reported seeing at least 6 people shot.
Active shooter. A gunman or gunmen killing or attempting to kill people in a confined, populated area.
That you'll see that 5 minutes can be a very, very long time. When you're hearing people scream and you're hearing bullets go around you, it becomes a very long time. You see, what happens is that the bad guy wakes up that morning and he decides that this is a good day to die. It's a good day to kill somebody. So what he will end up doing with that circumstance is he will begin waking up, coming to the place that he's going to come to, and then he'll begin to do it. That becomes his time. Nobody knows when he's going to do it. Nobody knows anything about it most of the time. It's all in his head. It's his time. When the law enforcement officer arrives on the scene, we're going to come into this place and we're going to neutralize the threat as quickly as possible. It becomes our time then. But you see, the problem is that little 5 or 6 minutes in the middle from the time the guy gets here till the time law enforcement arrives. Whose time do you think that is? The answer is pretty clear. It's your time. What you choose to do during that period of time will determine whether you get to go home at night and kiss your family or whether you're going to be in a statistic laying on the floor. And it's not just about a church tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's about going to McDonald's. It's about being at Walmart. It's about being on vacation someplace. What you choose to do in those times will determine whether you're going to make it or not. So when I talk about an active shooter incident, which one of it comes to y'all's mind right off the bat when I say an active shooter?
Texas.
Columbine. I've done this presentation close to over 100 times in different places, and I can tell you that every time I ask that question, Columbine is what comes. And the reason being, it's not the first active shooter incident by far. But you know what it was? It was the first active shooter incident that me and you got to sit on our couch and have a ringside seat and watch people be slaughtered on our television set and watch all the law enforcement come along that way. So you saw that come into mind. So when you think about it, Columbine happened on April 20th, 1999. Not too long ago, but look at the things that's changed since then because of this. There were 2 shooters. That's an anomaly because 98% of all active shooter incidents have only 1 shooter. This is one of those times that they came with 2. Okay? You had 12 students that were killed. You had 1 teacher that was killed. And you had more than 20 injured during that time. But here's the thing. The shooting lasted almost an hour. Almost an hour. There was an SRO at that school. He was in the parking lot and had went out to have a sandwich in the parking lot when the shooting started in the cafeteria. The shooters knew where he sat at the table every single day at the cafeteria, and they even put a bomb under his table so that he would be the first victim. But just by happenstance, he ate a sandwich in his car that day. And when the bomb went off, it didn't explode, but it put smoke out everywhere. And so that was the thing. The SRO couldn't get back inside the building because it was taking fire. So when you begin to think about that, those shooters ended up committing suicide that day. Now I'm going to back up and I'm going to explain what I'm going to talk to you about. You're getting ready to hear a 911 tape that happened that day. You can imagine it's going to be the librarian. She's going to be talking to 911, and she's going to be telling them that there are shooters in the building. You're going to hear her talk about to the children, get on the floor, get under the tables. You're going to hear her continually say that over and over and over again. I want you to know every time you hear a gunshot, somebody's getting shot. Okay, this is a real situation that you'll hear here.
County 911. Yes, I took your call about high school. There was a shooting here with a gun. It was shot out of the window. I believe one of them. I've been called by high school. I don't know what's in my shoulder. If there was just a last piece of shoulder. Okay, is anything within your hand? Okay. And the school was in a panic. And I ended the library. I thought, stop. I got a table here. Hands under the table. Our business training and the teachers are, told me, please, okay, we're getting them there. Who's the student, ma'am? I did not know who the student is. Okay. I saw a student, I was in all the other guys. Okay. I was hoping, I saw a guy, I said, what's going on out there? He said, oh, it's probably something else. He told me it's something, so I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know what he's not trying to do today. See what was going on. He turned the gun straight at us and shot. And the guy in the window went out. And he kept standing there with me. I think he got hit. Okay. Something in my shoulder. Okay. We got help on the way, ma'am. Okay. Oh, God. Stay on the line. Oh, God. Do we know where he's at? I'm sorry? Do we know where he's at? Okay. I don't know, but he's up here. He's right outside of here. He's outside? He's outside of the hall. Outside of the hall or outside of the hall? Okay. There are alarms and things like that. Smoke. My God, smoke is like coming into the room. Okay. I'm going to take a here. I don't know what's happening in the rest of the building. Don't take a look and you know, I don't know. I'm sure something has been calling 911 to tell you. We got a lot of people on. Okay. I just want you to stay in the line with me. I need to know what's going on. Okay. Okay. I am on the floor. Okay. You got the kid there? And I've got every student on the floor. We're going to stay on the floor. Is there any way you can lock the doors? It's always something that came out there and I'm going to say, the door is right outside the library door. Okay? I don't think I'm going to go out there. Okay? I got your deal. Okay? You got it. Okay? I have to go to the door to shut down the door. Okay? I've got the kids on the floor. I got all the kids in the library. We have paramedics, we have fire, and we have police on route. Okay, sir? Okay. Okay. I can't believe my own see the kids here. Okay, so we got police officers on. Okay, just try and keep the kids in the library calm. Yeah. Is there any way you can block the door so no one can get in? I do not. Okay. I guess I can try to go. I can try outside that door. I'm not afraid to go to the door. That's okay. That's what it is. I'm not afraid to go there. Okay. That's okay. Okay. I told the kids to get on the floor and I told them to get all the children are on the floor and the table. Okay. As long as you just try and don't say a word. Okay. As long as you can keep everyone there as calm as they can. I'm very going to go right now. There's one on my yeah, we got alarms going off now as well. Yeah, there's one. There's nothing still with smoke. Okay. Okay. Keep everyone low to the floor. Yeah. Everyone stay on the floor. Stay on the floor. Stay on the table. Okay. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I said, what was that? It's not. It was outside at the time. And I was on college. The cells are. know. It's not even shut up. I do not know who the student was. I don't even know. I thought it was wearing black. It didn't look very large. He looked like he was a male student. He was out there. He looked like he was climbing out shooting or something. I said, what is that? I said, it's totally different. It's like that. It's totally different video production. You know, it's just right. And they come say, well, that's not, you know, like, click that or look. And I was going out there to say no. And I was walking. I thought if I got that was really close. That's just, okay. What's your name, man? Patty? Okay. Okay, try to keep as many people there as you can. Okay. Do you know who he is? Okay.
That was a long 911 call, wasn't it? It's 5 minutes and 23 seconds. 5 minutes and 23 seconds. What's the response time? 5 to 6 minutes, right? See, she kept saying, everyone stay on the floor, stay under the tables, keep as many people down. They saw someone coming in, but at the same token, they thought it was a cap gun. They didn't see it. You know what people will tell me whenever they see something that's suspicious? Well, it's probably nothing. I don't want to bother anybody with it. What if I'm wrong? Would it be better to be wrong and be safe? What I tell people is this: if you see something suspicious in your neighborhood or your church or wherever it might be, tell somebody. 99% of the time it's going to be nothing, but you'll know it's nothing. That's what you need to be thinking about. I want you to take a look right here. You see where I put the red arrows up? That's the library. That's the schematic of Columbine. When you look at that library and you see that those little red arrows are pointing to little circles that are gray, that's where people died. On the floor, under the tables, in the library. You know, the sad part about that whole thing is that big red arrow is a door to the outside. For 5 minutes and 23 seconds, people stayed on the floor and under the table in a library when it took 15 seconds to run through a door and get away. But yet they stayed inside in a room with an unlocked door and waited till somebody came in to shoot them. That's what's sad about the whole thing.
Now this week we have had the...
Before I play that, I want you to understand, when I said this the first time about get away if you can, it was really a concept that we need to do lockdown, 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 lockdown. Okay? And I'm not telling you that lockdown is not a great option. It is, but it's not the only option. If you're somewhere that you can get away, get away. If you're at a school and you're on the playground, do not try to come back into the school to go get locked down. Run away. I'd rather spend all day long searching to find you than to be able to spend that hour trying to circle your body with chalk. This here is someone who was at the scene. And listen to what he says about how that went.
Now this week we have had the honor of bringing you the stories of those most deeply affected by the Columbine tragedy. And now, here 20 years later, they all have one thing in common. They want you to know there is light after dark. Tonight, here's Sean Graves.
Every time I come into the library, I get just a dropping in the stomach feeling coming through those doors. It's just, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
Being here on the campus of Columbine High School is not easy for Sean Graves, emotionally or physically.
It's been rocky. I'm not going to say it's been a smooth road. It's definitely a dirt road. It's not paved yet. There's days that I wake up and my ankle hurts, or my knee's killing me, my back hurts. I wake up every day in pain.
Sitting here next to his wife, Kara, he recounts that day in 1999, then 15 years old, hearing gunshots.
We knew what we were hearing, we just chose to ignore that. Because we were naive, we were stupid.
Sean was shot 6 times. One of the bullets paralyzed him, and doctors didn't think he would walk again.
I need to do more physical therapy before I'll know if I'll walk.
That was in the summer of 1999. After months of rehab at Craig Hospital, he proved them all wrong. And when looking back on how he was injured, the way he describes it may surprise you.
I allowed myself to get shot, shot in the neck or the shoulder, and then I was shot 3 times immediately across my abdomen.
It's interesting you use the words, I allowed myself to be shot. Why do you say that?
I'm a father now. Well, we have a beautiful baby girl. She's 3 years old. And now that I'm a parent, I'm not gonna lie, there's quite a few sleepless nights because I can't physically protect my daughter 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. We've got to raise our children a little differently, to think a little differently, without stripping them of their innocence. We still want to allow them to have a childhood, but we've got to start training them younger to understand how to identify a potential threat and what to do with that once they have that information. So when I say that I allowed myself to be shot, I'm looking at it because I was naive. We chose to ignore the warning signs and we kept approaching them anyways, where I could have ran away and we wouldn't be here today.
He could have ran away and we wouldn't be here today. Think about that for just a moment. Sandy Hook, 2012. This was when the student, or he wasn't a student, he was a relative of one of the faculty. He walks in and he shoots the front doors out and he walks into the office first thing. And he shoots everybody inside the office. That's the first thing he did. When you begin to look, he goes down the smallest hallway, if you will, to where the first graders are at. And he opens the door and he looks in and it's empty. So he walks on down to the next one. And when he opens the door in there, he looks in and that room is empty too. He hears a sound. He goes to the bathroom, because every little kindergarten and first grade room has got a bathroom in it. Guess what it doesn't have? It doesn't have a lock on the door. So he goes to that room where he hears the sound, and when he does, he opens the door and he sees something like that. A room full of a bunch of little first graders with their teacher inside that room. And what he does is he shoots every one of those kids like shooting fish in a barrel. And then he remembers the classroom before that also has a bathroom. And he goes back in and he shoots them. When you think about it, that was 2012. And what I'm showing you up here is names and dates of birth. And you can look at them. Charlotte Bacon, February the 22nd, 2006 was her date of birth. This was on December the 14th, 2012. Look how old she was. When you look at those names, there were 26 people dead at Sandy Hook. 20 of those were first graders. 20 first graders were killed. Now, see, we hear this all the time on the news. There was 3 people shot today at the Postal Service. There was 20 people shot at this area. There was this many shot. And we get to hearing that time after time after time. And before long, we'll say, did you hear about that shooting they had today? And it's like, yeah, it's bad, wasn't it? Yeah, and you go on about your life and you don't think about it anymore. Well, see, today I want to bring you back to this just a moment at Sandy Hook. Every one of those names up there had a family. And every one of those families were tremendously destroyed the rest of their life because they lost someone they loved. And that entire community was destroyed because of that. This is an ABC presentation that you'll see next. It tells just a little bit about them.
There are so many victims now to talk about. 26 innocent lives lost, and Dan, I know you have more on that.
Yeah, yes, we now know their names, in fact, this morning. They are so young, all in the first grade, all of them shot more than once by a semi-automatic rifle. The medical examiner saying, mercifully, death was swift. He added, this is the worst case he had ever seen. ABC David Robach is back with more on this, and this is the hardest part.
And Dan, it's so true. Every day we learn more about the victims, and this story just gets harder and harder. This morning we know the names, we see the little faces of those sweet little boys and girls, and the teachers who love them, and the parents who so desperately miss them.
12 little girls and 8 little
boys, all only in first grade, and the teachers who tried to save them. On Saturday, photos and details of lives cut short started to emerge.
The worst that I know of any of my colleagues having seen.
Noah Ponzer had just turned 6. His twin sister survived the shooting, but Noah did not. 7-year-old Grace McDonald, family members telling ABC News, "Our daughter Grace was the love and light of our family. Words cannot adequately express our sense of loss." Anna Marquez Green, the daughter of a jazz musician, her father says they're struggling to work through this nightmare. Catherine Hubbard's family said in a statement Saturday, "We ask that you continue to pray for us and the other families who have experienced loss in this tragedy." Jesse Lewis was looking forward to making gingerbread houses in school that day. He was in Victoria Soto's class. She, just 27 years old. Her family says she was shielding some of her first graders when she died. Lauren Rousseau had just started as a full-time teacher in September. She was having the best year of her life, her mother said. Mary Sherlach, the school psychologist, in a statement Saturday, her family said that Mary felt like she was doing God's work by helping children. She headed towards the shooter when the assault began. Joined by the school's beloved principal, Dawn Huxbrook, a mother herself, it is now believed she turned on the PA system when the shooting started so others could be warned of the danger that had invaded their school. It is so difficult to find the right words after seeing how much this community has lost, but somehow, some way, the father of little Emily Parker found those words when he spoke to cameras outside of a Newtown church.
As the deep pain begins to settle into our hearts, we find comfort reflecting on the incredible person that Emily was, and how many lives that she was able to touch in her short time here on earth. Emily was bright, creative, and very loving, because those were the gifts that were given to her by her Heavenly Father. The strength that she gave us and the example that she showed us is remarkable. She is an incredible person, and I'm so blessed to be her dad. I don't know how to get through something like this. My wife and I don't understand how to process all of this and how to get our lives going. I'm not mad, because I have to make sure that I use this event to do what I can, to do whatever I can, to want to make sure that my family and my wife and my daughters are taken care of, and that if there's anything that I can do to help anybody at any time, anywhere, that I'd be willing to do that.
What an incredibly strong and brave and courageous man. My hat is certainly off to him as a parent. I don't think that I could do that.
And covering this story as a parent, I know you've got 3 little girls, extraordinarily difficult.
It is incredibly difficult. School is closed here in Newtown tomorrow, but everyone around the country, every parent out there who is going to take their children to school tomorrow, it is going to be a fundamentally different experience, because there is a fear factor and there's just this sense that you don't know. That elementary school isn't sacred anymore. It isn't a safe place anymore that we once thought it would be. And I think a lot of parents are going to hug their kids a lot more tightly tomorrow and tell them they love them before they send them off.
Indeed. And taking things not so much for granted anymore. I know later in the broadcast you're going to be back with more about how to talk to children.
So we got to be thinking about something. How are we going to handle a circumstance where we're in a crisis? Are we going to be passive, or are we going to be proactive? Now, every church I've ever gone to, somebody gets mad because we talk about guns inside of the church. Jesus and guns don't mix, okay? But let me ask you a question. Would you rather have people that are qualified to be ready to be able to defend you inside your church, or would you rather be able to lose some of your lambs? It may never happen here, but would you rather be prepared? For me personally, as a pastor, I had to make some decisions of what I wanted to do when I was at the church that I was at. And I had to make a decision, was I going to put something in place where I had people with weapons or not? And the fact about the matter is that I knew that it was a remotely small chance somebody was coming to my church to hurt somebody, and I didn't do something to stop that. I would never be able to live with myself. And so I made a decision I would do whatever I needed to do to take care of them. And I said this, you know, you may think that I'm trying to be a good pastor, but if you don't think I'll grab you by the hair of the head and drag you out of here, you try to hurt my lambs and I'll show you. And so I think that's the mindset. We have to find a balance with that. So we got to look at some response strategies of how we're going to handle things. If you can think about it, you can prepare for it. If you can sit down and say, what if this were to happen, what would we do? You can prepare for that. So you begin to think about that. The bottom line on it is when someone becomes an active shooter, whether they're going to be mentally ill or they're wanting revenge or they're upset about something or they're just, you know, some of the crazy suicide issues that you might find with people, no matter what they are, the thing that you got to remember is that they will come through this building and they will continue to kill someone until they're stopped. You're not going to reason with them. You're not going to bargain with them. They're going to shoot till they run out of bullets or somebody stops them in some way, form, or fashion. If you look at the kids that went into Columbine school, this was the weapons that they took into Columbine. Make no mistake about it, they want to kill as many people as they possibly can. They want to rack up the body count. That's why they decided to do that. You look at the average active shooter incident lasts for 12 minutes, but 37% of them are over in 5 minutes. Why would you think that 1/3, a little over 1/3 is over in 5 minutes before law enforcement get here? Because somebody like you decided not on my watch. Because somebody decided, I'm going to stop this before somebody else that I love gets hurt. So you got to have that mentality. We're going to talk about that as well. I want you to take a look at this. This is a mall, and it's actually security cameras. There's no sound. It's actually live people getting shot. Okay, it's from the security cameras. Happened September 24, 2016. And I'm going to kind of narrate it for you, so I want you to take a look. And what I want you to look at is to see how people are reacting when an active shooter walks in and how the active shooter acts. And if you'll notice, when he starts to do this, he'll walk right through the front door like he owns the title to the mall, carrying his gun like he's going on a hunting trip. Watch him. He walks directly in and starts looking for someone to shoot. It happens to be on a Saturday morning, so there's not a lot of people in the mall that morning. But he finds his first victim and he shoots him. This is a second view of that. He continues to stalk through, just looking to see who he can find. Now you notice somebody's running. Take a look how they're running right quick. Notice that I'm not telling you to just run. I'm telling you to run smart. Watch what happens when this guy just runs. Now take a look over there if you can, in that area there. Watch, they crouch down, they see someone running, they're running away. Now when they run past them, watch them. They run smart, away from the danger. They get away, they live. This one is running, slips and falls, that's where he stays. He continues to go through the mall looking for the next victims. If you'll look right over here, you'll see it's like a perfume counter right in there. You'll see him come through there in just a second. There he comes. And he'll stop and he'll do a little shooting. You can't see what he's doing, and I'll show you a close-up of it in a second. Notice he's running away now. He has no weapon. This is the close-up of it. The attendant ducks down just to hide. There's only one way in and one way out, and it's right there. They hide down on the other side, and look how she gets down on her knees. He comes around, he shoots her there, and he shoots them there because they were not prepared. He'll lay his gun down, and he'll take off. He's finished shooting for the day. Now he'll run out the front door, you'll see a young man starts to tackle him, and he decides, no, it's not going to be a good idea, so he just goes for help. They arrested the guy a few hours after that. They put him in prison. He had got upset because his wife or girlfriend had been working at Macy's and had gotten fired. And so he went in there to avenge her. They arrested him, put him in the cell, he hangs himself that night. says that's not a good idea. So when you think about that, these are the people that died that morning. Do you think that when they got up that morning and ate breakfast on Saturday morning, do you think by any chance that any of them thought that this will be the day that I'm going to go to the mall and I'm going to encounter an active shooter? No, they wouldn't have went with it. No, because they didn't know that. Did you think tonight that you might come to church here and there could possibly be an active shooter come through that door over there? Didn't dawn on you, did it? If you can think of it, you can prepare for it. See, these people didn't believe it and they ended up becoming a victim. If I can get you to the point to where you'll begin to realize that it can happen anywhere you're at and you're always watching, you're always prepared, and you're always looking, you'll begin to understand that. This is just a small little church down in Texas, and this guy walks in and starts shooting people. I'm going to just show you the size of the church, and I'll go through this very quickly, but you can begin to see.
People who live in this tiny Texas town are gathering in their community center tonight, anxious for updates on the injured, grieving the dead.
We all in here know what happened today, and it's something we all say does not happen in small communities.
Police say the gunman was young, white, and dressed all in black. He had an assault-style rifle and went into the church shooting. When he left, a neighbor approached the gunman with his rifle. There was a car chase. The gunman was found dead in his car. It's unclear if he killed himself or was wounded in a shootout. Police aren't identifying him and told reporters,
if you came here want to know the motive behind this shooting, you're leader disappointed.
This is a church.
First Baptist Church posts its services online. This was last week, eerie to watch now. You get a sense of how small the congregation is, how young. It's unclear if what happened this morning was recorded.
So look at this and see that there is nobody, no size church, no place would be immune to someone coming in. Okay? When you begin to think about that, that's why we want to take you from being unprepared tonight to being prepared. We want you to expect the unexpected and know what you would do just in case that happens. You see, the Bible tells us in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 16, he says, see that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Preparing, redeeming it. Don't let it get away from you without knowing exactly what you need to be able to do. When I talk about an active shooter, I'm not talking about someone who believes in the Second Amendment, carries a weapon, or goes and shoots their weapon. I'm not talking about that at all. What I am talking about is an attempted mass murderer. Someone who is going to take a tool and try to destroy it. And every time you turn around, and y'all hear me on TV today, or whatever y'all are out there, everybody always says that guns are bad. Okay? It's not the guns that's bad, it's the idiots behind the guns that's bad. Okay? So when you think about that and understand that every time there's a shooting, a politician comes up and says, we need new laws and new gun control. Let me ask you all out there today, has the new laws and gun control, has any of the drug laws we ever took stopped the drugs from coming? I don't know. How many more drug laws are we going to put in place and think that that's going to change it? No more drugs. All we got to do is pass the law and it'll be over. Go ahead and pass it. There's no more guns and see if that stops it.
Make it worse.
No, we need to be able to address mental health and a lot of issues. Did you have a question, sir?
I was just going to say, if you want an example of that, Chicago has some of the tightest gun laws in this country. 769 people were shot and killed last year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gun laws won't change that. Okay? You mean to tell you what will stop bad people with guns? Good people with guns. That's what will stop them. So when I talk about an active shooter, let me define it for you. It's an armed assailant using deadly force and continues to do so while having unrestricted access. When you heard the other day that there was an active shooter event going on in Cumberland County, everybody got all scared and everything like that. It wasn't an active shooter event. It was a shooting, a simple shooting. An active shooter event is that it's not contained and people continue to die as it's going on. There's a big difference in what that is. Active shooter facts is an active shooter event is rarely impulsive. Didn't just wake up one day and say it's time to do it. It's been thought about for a while. 93% of them, they have warning signs long before that. Listen, young people, you'll see it on social media. You'll see it on your Snapchats. You'll get to hear about it at school. You'll see it on the different social medias everywhere. When you hear something, say something. When you see something, say something. What you choose to say about those things early will determine whether people die or not. The shooter's most likely already on somebody's radar. The shooter down in Florida, the FBI done investigated him once. Okay? So when you look at that, he normally will tell somebody, he'll put it on social media, he'll sit there and show his gun, he'll show his cool shooter outfit online. He will do something most of the time down the line before it ever comes to the day that he's really going to do it. So when you see something, report that. You see, the Secret Service says it like this: the pathway of violence has 4 components. There are some of the best people you'll ever find is the Secret Service that knows how to manage threats to the president. They taught us that basically every threat has 4 levels. Level 1 is fantasy or ideation. It's where somebody comes up with the idea, I think I'm going to bring a gun to school and shoot up the school. I'm going to bring a gun out to that church and shoot that preacher. It's ideation. It's nothing more than them just saying it, spontaneous. But let me say this to the young people in the house tonight, this. Your words have power. What you choose to say with them can choose to bring you problems. If you stand up in a theater and you say fire and somebody gets hurt, you're going to be liable for that and you're going to get arrested. If you get on an airplane and you yell bomb, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to be in some serious trouble. If you get on social media or you tell your friends, I'm going to bring a gun to school and shoot somebody, you're going to be going to jail. Understand that. There is a consequence for what you choose to say. But see, it's not just about the fantasy or the ideation. It is then the plan. The plan is, I'm going to make a list of the people I want to hurt. I want to draw a schematic of the school or the place. I want to say how I'm going to shoot them and where I'm going to shoot them and what's going to happen. It's going to be a plan. And then the third level is where I'm truly trying to obtain bomb-making materials or guns or something to that effect. And finally, I'm actually doing something. I'm coming to school with the gun. The Bible tells us in 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. If you don't think that there's a real devil out here, folks, come with me and look at what I see. Because I will assure you today that there is more violence and more effects of evil today than I've ever seen in my 27 years of law enforcement. And that's why whenever we look at the shepherd has a balance. The goal of this church is to, 1, equip the saints to ministry so that they're going to go out and be able to change lives. The second goal of that is we want to get the message of Jesus Christ out to people so that they're going to get to know the truth and see the light. We can't do anything that's going to stop that mission. But at the same token, we also have a responsibility as leaders within every church is to make sure our people are safe. And so when you begin to think about that, think about the power that's on your pastor. You've got to find a balance of that. How does that work? At what level do we go? And I'll tell you what I told a lot of the people when I talk to them is this. I like plumbing, and I like water, and I like lights, but I don't like to see pipes, and I don't like to see wires. So when you come to church, it's good to have weapons. Somebody can take care of something that needs to be. But if you're walking around with a hog leg on the side so everybody can see that, there's a problem with that. It's affecting what you're doing. You know, Colonel Grossman says this, I love people that openly carry. They make great distractions while I shoot the people that's trying to shoot them. Okay? So don't come in looking like it's a lot of security. Do you want some visibility? Of course you want a little visibility, but you want to make sure what you're doing is a lot different. See, an active plan goes with prevention, an active response, follow-up care, and long-term care. It's a long process when things start with this. And see, the plan is to have a plan before you need a plan. Don't start trying to fix a plan when something happens, because you'll not be able to do that. But have something together so you know what you're going to do ahead of time. You prepare it, you preach it, you practice it. You should have a fire drill. You should have an active shooter drill. You should be prepared to handle things so that everybody in your congregation knows how to act and who's going to do what when something happens. And so when you talk about making a church a safe church, first consideration is this: you've got to determine what type of emergencies would happen here at this church. An active shooter could be one of those. Fire, injury, medical emergencies, severe weather. You've got to prepare a plan for all of those type of things. And you got to also remember that even though we're living in a little town, riots and terrorism can happen here just as quickly as it can somewhere else. When you look at this, you walk through your church, you do an inspection, you ask, what if it happened here? What would I need? What doors should be secured? How many of these doors need to be open during the service? You know, I went to one church one time and did this presentation, and I always like to walk around and be snoopy when I'm coming through. And the children were in the bottom floors, and all the doors around it were open, unlocked, unsecured. So anyone could have walked in at any time. So you got to consider, what do we need to change? And let me tell you what happens. When the pastor decides we need to lock these other doors and keep just one open and keep it manned, when that happens, first of all, somebody's going to say, well, I like to park over here. And if I were to park here, I'd like to come in that door because it's more convenient for me. So it will be a little less convenient for you, but you'll be safer. Keep those things in mind. When you look at this, you ask yourself, are we prepared for emergency crisis situations? What do we need involved? Do we have backups to that? What kind of equipment do we need? And we're going to talk about some of those things as well. And I know that y'all are looking at a church safety team, and that it's really important for you to consider what you call your team. You don't want to call it a security team necessarily, you want a safety team. And you need to consider that. You've got to look at, if this church endorses a security or a safety team, the liability falls on the church as well. Keep those things in mind. You want to make sure that, hey, I got my gun permit, I would love to be on the team. You can't let just anybody on the team. You look for people with backgrounds, people with law enforcement, with military backgrounds, someone that is qualified to do those things. And if you don't, what you do is you put more liability. And then if you do set that up, you want to make sure you got qualifications and training, and then determine how many people you need on that, okay? Prevention, the best response is to be ready before the wolf shows up, and if he doesn't, that's fine, but if he does, maybe the lambs get to go home, and that's the whole idea of it. So your prevention has 4 A's: awareness, access, alert, and action. These are the 4 A's that we'll talk about now. So first and foremost is awareness of church property, awareness of people on church property, and awareness of possible conflicts. So when you think about that, when we look at what would be the target for somebody to come in here, a lot of churches I found that on Sunday morning, they've got great security. But on Wednesday night, they don't have much, because it's just a little group on Wednesday night. So I would tell you to understand the worship services, prayer meetings, any type of gathering, children's functions, business meetings, you should always look at anything your church is doing at what type of security did you need for that thing. And I'm not going to play that, but I'm going to talk about it. When Charleston, South Carolina, on a Wednesday night, simply a Bible study going on. And what happened was one young man walked in there to some of the seniors that was there on Wednesday night having the Bible study. They invited him in, come on in, sit with us, study with us, and he did. He sat through the whole thing until almost to the end, when he got up and pulled his gun and shot them sitting inside of that on a Wednesday night. You should be aware of your church property, an unsecured door. When you walk in and you see a door unsecured, the first thing that needs to happen is you need to back out. You need to call law enforcement and let's make sure that everything is okay here before you come in. Not just that, if you find a window that's unsecured, or especially if you come in and something is not the way it needs to be and the room's in disarray, stop, back off, don't touch anything, because it may be a crime scene as well before you know it. If you find a suspicious bag here in the building, okay, don't consider it's somebody's school backpack. Stop, call somebody to come out and look at it. You never know in today's society what we need to be finding, and it could be something more than just a backpack. And if you find an unrecognized vehicle in your parking lot, you need to call. Don't just consider somebody sitting here. Call it in, have somebody come out and check that vehicle. You know, this is at the church I was at. This is one of my security men that was there. and he found a car, so he's now running the tag on that car to see who it is. He's called dispatch, asking an officer to come over and to check that tag and see who it belongs to. So when you look at awareness of the people, you need to know who is on your church property. You need to know who the visitors are. So if you've got a program of doing that, you want to know who those are. You want to know who's going in and out of service, who's acting a little weird. You know who comes here on a regular basis, and you know who's not here. You want to look at who's walking in the building, who has got any kind of unusual behavior, attempts to get into any of the children's classes and says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm lost. You need to know who those people are, okay? You need to know who's in the parking lot, and you need to know who is trying to be in some type of unauthorized area, okay? I will tell you that I worked a case years ago of a man that walked in, brought his wife and 4 children, and sat in the back and said, Pastor, I just got a heart for children. I love to work with your kids. And he worked with 3 different churches in Cumberland County with the kids. And I arrested him and put him in prison for 17 years for abusing children. Be careful who you let around the lambs. Awareness of conflict, child custody disputes, domestic violence, heated arguments, other tensions. Knowing is your business. Look, I don't know how you guys do it, but I know from where I came from, everybody talks about everybody to some degree. Okay? So you all know what's going on in everybody's life. Okay? If somebody is going through domestics, if there's orders of protection, if there's things going on with somebody inside the building, make sure the pastor knows what's going on with that. At my church one day, I had a girl come in, and she looked at me, and she hadn't been at church for a while, and she looked at me and she says, I'm scared. I've got an order of protection on my ex-husband, and I'm afraid he'll show up here today. And I said, well, don't worry about it, hon. I said, you just go have a seat right over there and enjoy the service. And I said, I've got people here just in case he shows up. He did show up with a knife and told us specifically he come to cut her head off. We stopped him on the front porch. We obtained him, and he was arrested and taken into custody for violation of order of protection right there. But you see, that's the thing. You don't think it'll happen. 2 months ago, I took a knife off of a guy in my parking lot. Was a homeless guy walking through, cussing my security people, and we took a knife off him. Trust me, you don't know who's coming to your building anymore. Make sure you know. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. Our goal is, once again, on the pastoral side and on the mission side, is to be as kind with people as we possibly can until we can't be kind anymore. We've got to make sure that we take care of people as much as we possibly can. So that goes to the point of access. How accessible is this building? You want to minimize the number of entry points. Okay, so on a service time, there ought to be 1 entry point into your building, and it should be manned by someone who's going to greet people. But that greeter doesn't need to just be a handshaker. He can smile, but he needs to be able to prepare with whatever needs to happen along the way with that. You keep the entrances staffed. You have additional entrances equipped with hardware that you will allow exits, but no entrance. So keep those things in mind. You could consider a camera system. Depending on the size of your campus and what you've got, you might want to look at a camera system. They're inexpensive today. If you do that, you'll need someone to man those, to watch those, okay? But by and large, camera systems are going to come back and document what happened most of the time because people don't man those. Other considerations: identify any blind spots that's in the property, control what items is brought in, and closely monitor suspicious people. We have people, when they come into church, we were out in the middle of town, and a lot of times they come in carrying a big duffel bag. Sorry, sir, you can't bring that in. And you would be as polite as you possibly could. And you would explain to them, but I'll tell you what, let me have that and I'll put it in safekeeping for you until you're ready to leave. You bring a guitar in and you ain't been there to play the guitar before, I want to see your guitar. I want to look at it. I want to make sure there's not something else inside your guitar. Okay, so in essence, when you begin to look at those things, you want to control what people are bringing into your building. Okay, and one of the things, we had a guy come in one morning to our church service, and we had a morning breakfast that we were there. And he just wandered in carrying a duffel bag and everything else. So we got the duffel bag, but he still acted strange. One of the things I wanted to make sure that we did was I wanted to make sure that we took care of him and make sure he knew Jesus. I wanted to make sure he wasn't there for the wrong purpose. And so what I did is I assigned him a special guy, his friend for the day. And I said, and he was one of my security men, and I said, hey, John, I'll use a different name. I said, this is Joe. Joe, I know this is your first time here, and I want to make sure that you're as comfortable as you possibly can, and you get where you're going. Joe will show you where all the ropes are at. Joe, if you don't care, take him and show him where the food's at, and help him do that. And Joe did. And you know what happened? The guy ended up getting to the point we found out later, we arrested him, and the very backpack that he had was full of knives that he was there that day with. So you never know. Whew. Alert. Observe and report to your leadership without delay. I covered that. And when I say that, one of the most important things to be able to do is you're going to hear something, see something, smell something, whatever it might be. The longer you take reporting it are seconds that you could have done something, maybe to stop something before it happened. So that first initial response, that's the thing. You've got to overcome denial. You see, in denial has 3 stages. If you look at this. First of all, you're looking at denial. That means, for instance, you hear a car backfire. Boom! What was that? I guess it's just a car backfire. Boom! That sounded like a gunshot. Oh, that couldn't be happening here. That only happens in places like California. Boom! And at that point in time, it's too late. You're going to have to decide what to do because your target, the person is right there in front of you then. So when you look at that, that's the 3 stages. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? If you already got your mind made up what you would do in those circumstances, you hear that first sound and it could possibly be a gunshot, check it out right then. Make sure. Don't wait and just assume it's not that. And nothing I say today will be able to prepare you for the actual event. Your body, under stress, reacts differently. Okay, I want you to take a look at something. This is just your heart rate. Right now, my heart rate is running 89 beats a minute. I'm standing up here talking to you so you can see my heart rate's rolling a little bit. But most of the time, when you're sitting still, you've got a resting heart rate 60 to 65 beats a minute. When I come out of my house in the morning and I look around, I'm right at that 90 mark. I'm scanning, I'm looking, I'm seeing what's happening. But when you find something that's possibly dangerous, that heart rate goes to 120 beats a minute. And then, when you actually have to take action, your heart rate's at 150 beats a minute. When you have in a fight, you're at 175 beats a minute. So imagine on a treadmill, running wide open and trying to communicate. You notice Patty Nielsen, when she was talking on a 911 call, how her voice was? Because that heart rate was high. And so you've got to learn how to handle your body as far as that goes, because you'll get tunnel vision, you'll have that moment, if you're not careful, you'll just freeze, and you'll not do anything. Your fingers don't work anymore because you're over here, all the blood comes from your body and your limbs in to protect the torso. And so what happens is if you watch martial artists learn techniques and they're doing all these pretty little moves, well, unless they've done that 10,000 times, their little fingers are going to not work right. That's why we use gross body moves to be able to make that work during those rough times. When you look at the safety team, you want to determine who you want. You need greeters, as I said before, that's just greeters. They're a part of your safety team. Their eyes, their ears, they're looking. Those ushers and greeters are going to know what's going on. And in the middle of those, some of those people are your security team and some of them are greeters. You need parking lot attendants. You might want somebody in your parking lot knowing what's going on, because if you could trap out a thread outside before it gets inside, you want that every time if you can do that. And then you want someone in your kids' ministry that's going to be there to protect your children as well. And then you want someone here in the adult sanctuary. And it depends on the leadership, what they want to do. I never did want a security person for me because I am a security person. I'll take care of my own. But sometimes you've got to look, the leadership will be the target. And then if you've got medical personnel, it would be nice to have a nurse or someone that knows what's going on, or a paramedic. And then others, it's your job, call 911. The moment anything's going on, start calling. You all are the 911 callers. And then we want 5 or 6 or 7 people calling 911 at the same time. And then you want to look at a communication system. How are you communicating? I don't know if y'all have a second building out here that you work out of with the children or whatever like that, but if you do you know what's going on? If the trouble goes, is there a communication system going back and forth? And you need to know that people know what's happening so we can converge and be prepared for that. And there's a little thing called Zello. It's an app that you can put on your cell phone that gives you actually a little walkie-talkie that if you don't have the radios, you can download the app for free, set you up your security group and use that as well. And visibility, I've talked about that just a little bit. There are times you want visible security officers and there are times that you don't. And if you have an incident going on and law enforcement's coming, have somebody in the parking lot that's visible to direct people where they're going to be going, okay? That's an important thing to remember. And then you'll never defeat customer service. How you doing? When I was the pastor, I shook hands with every person that came in. I wanted to look you in the eye. I wanted to shake hands. I wanted to know you for one thing. And there's just something about shaking hands with people looking in the eye. You'll know when somebody's not quite what they need to be. And you'll know if somebody's there for trouble or not. And you want to know how you're going to get people out for a fire or for an active shooter event. How are we going to put people out of the building? How are we going to get them to safety? How are we going to evacuate the building if something's going on? And when that alert comes out, you want to tell people what's going on. And you don't want to use codes. If you go to some places, they've got a code that means there's an intruder in the building. Say there's an intruder in the building. Use plain language. Simply say, I told the schools when I was training the schools, if you've got a man that's suspicious in the back parking lot with a gun, don't say code purple. There's a man in the back parking lot with a gun, dressed in black, locked down. Get people secured. And when you call 911, the first thing is get the address out. Let them know. I know that our technology is supposed to say right where you're at. Technology sucks many times. So tell them where you're at. Let them know that first and foremost, and then give them as much information as you possibly can. Take a deep breath, calm down as best you can, and tell them that information. Action, armed and unarmed. Let me just be clear here. Not the best way to handle an active shooter is to shoot first. Okay? When they walk through with a gun and they're ready to hurt somebody, the quicker they get shot is the quicker that situation will be neutralized. But understand that sometimes you can't shoot first, and understand in some places there can't be guns. So at that point in time, we got to look at what we want to do. I want to show you this one thing about this one presentation right here. Take a look.
We begin with those disturbing attacks on religious services. First, the breaking news from Texas, a gunman opening fire inside a church near Fort Worth. The West Freeway Church of Christ live streaming the service as the man seen there at the top stood up from his seat, pulled out a long gun, and fired several times. Other church members right there shooting back. One victim was killed, another in critical condition.
Now think about it for just a moment. The bad guy walks in. First of all, he had been there before. He had asked for money a couple of times before. This time he came in wearing a wig and a trench coat. Now, look. Me and him's going to have a conversation. Okay? You're not going to come in there looking that way until I know what's going on with you. Okay? If you'll notice, the reason that he was able to get a good shot is the moment that security officer that was inside that building, he knew him and had him sighted. If you'll notice, you could see it, the one had to reach behind because he was trying to disguise his weapon. He had to reach behind to start to get it. When he did, the guy shot him first. But the other officer was already there with his eyeball on him. And the moment he made the move, boom, 30 feet away, one headshot down. Okay? You keep those things in mind that it can happen here. And if you're going to deploy people out with weapons, and you've got to make some ideas of what you want done. First and foremost is this. I don't know who's got a handgun carry permit or not, but if you're not prepared to pull that weapon and shoot somebody and take a life, put your gun back home, put it in your little place, and keep it there until you go target shoot, because you don't need to be carrying it out. They're not to show people, they're not to scare people, they're not to warn people, they're not to wound people. They're to defend life and liberty, if you will. That's what a weapon's for. You need to determine what kind of firearm you're going to get. Don't get a little bitty gun that's going to make you mad when you shoot him. Get something that's going to have some knockdown power when you shoot it. And you want to make sure that when you do that, that you want to consider the ammunition. You want something that's going to cause as much damage as possible. And then, they asked one of the police chiefs down in Florida, where a guy came in and they shot him and killed him. He said, but Chief, how come he shot him 17 times? I know you're watching me. He said, why are you doing it 17 times? He said, because he didn't have 18 bullets. If you're trying to hurt me, I'm going to shoot you to quit trying to hurt me. Because I'm in fear of my life, or I'm in fear of serious bodily harm or death. Right? So when you begin to think about that, you need to consider that. The second thing you need to consider is the type of holster you're using. You need to have something that's going to secure your weapon. You need to know how to use it. Really and truly, guys, if you want to carry it on a holster, go in the bathroom, make sure it's unloaded, act like Barney Fife, and get that gun in and out to the point that you can figure out how to get that thing to use. I know there's a lot of it that makes it real secure. It's like a combination. Press down, pull forward, move it aside, then you get killed before you get the thing out. Okay? So know how to use your stuff. And then you want to consider the angle. You may be able to shoot, but is that angle going to take some victims in the process? If you miss, is it going through a wall? Is it going to hurt somebody? Consider the angle of the fire. And you want to make sure that once you engage, you're prepared to do what needs to be done. Once you have done that, you want to make sure somebody is trying to notify 911 that there's been a shooting out here, that the suspect is neutralized, or we've got him at gunpoint, and you want to have somebody in the parking lot waiting for the officers to help them come in and understand. Because you don't want to be the guy standing there with the guns and whenever they come in. Because I assure you, you're going to be in trouble if that happens. When law enforcement comes in, show them your hands and follow exact whatever they say. If they say, get on the ground, don't say, but listen, I'm the pastor of the church. Get on the ground. We don't care at that moment. We just want to make sure that everybody's safe. Unfortunately, there's some places that you can't go armed, and we're going to move with this. Basically, there are all kinds of these things you can learn about, and you can pay a lot of money for these things, but basically it boils down to this: run, hide, fight, and this is the free version, okay? So when you look at that, the first things first, no matter where you're at, if you're at Walmart, if you're in a restaurant, if you're wherever it could be at, if you can get away, get away. If you know where the shooter's at, and you're at Walmart, and he's at the front of the building, and he's shooting, and you're in the back of the building, and you know there's an exit sign that says, do not exit this or the alarm will sound, go out that door and go as far away from that danger as you possibly can. Get away. Run away as much as possible if you can. Leave all your personal property behind and go out the safest nearest exit. If you can have a rally point, if you're going to someplace at a mall or whatever it might be, have a rally point already established with your family that if we have to get away, this will be where we'll meet. Okay, so that people will know what to do. But run if you possibly can. And I've seen people, they want to gather up everything they've got and carry it with them when they're going. You can replace stuff, get away. I tell them like this when I talk to the kids at school: be like a deer. When it hears a noise, the tail pops up and away it goes. And it doesn't get on the floor and under the table. It runs with everything it's got. Any deer hunters in the house? Wouldn't you love to find that deer that's down behind a tree? No. You like to find that when you can rack up and fill all the freezers up for those kind of people. But what you want to do is the moment you hear that first sound, go. I tell the kids at school, run like Forrest Gump. Pick them up, put them down, don't look back till you can get away from everybody, right? Run away. If you're going to be on lockdown, that's good. But if you're on the playground, get away. Get to somebody that can help you.
Killers usually choose their victims at random. They look for easy targets. So the harder you are to see or to hit, the safer you are. When an attack starts, if you can find a way out of the location, do so.
Get out.
If you stay calm and think clearly, even in the middle of a life and death event, you improve your chances of making it out. Visualize your movements in advance.
Get us out. Stay behind me. Stay there.
Use cover, something that will stop a bullet, and concealment, something that at least keeps you out of sight.
Attention Central units, go through response needed regarding a 245 DSV 417. So we're at the Town Center shopping mall. Suspects wearing a face mask, possible body armor.
Use any available means to get out, including emergency exits or windows. Most restaurants and retail locations will also have exits in the back through kitchens or stock rooms. Even in the best cases, police are minutes, not seconds away. You must take action to protect yourself.
So one of the things he said is using cover and concealment. Cover will stop a bullet. Concealment will not. Let me tell you what the difference is so you guys can know. Imagine a big oak tree. If you're hiding behind a big oak tree, it will stop a bullet more than likely. If you're hiding behind a great big old leafy bush, they can't see you, but it won't stop a bullet. It'll go right through the bush. So when you're thinking about that, you look at things you could hide behind that would stop a bullet, and other things that would just conceal you as you're trying to get away. And if you don't know where the perpetrators are, don't run, lock out, lock down, and prep up. You're going to get prepared to do what needs to be done. When I talk about hiding, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about layering security on top of that door. I'm talking about getting everything. Look around you. What could we put in front of a door right now? Tables, chairs, anything that you can find. You would pile stuff up so it's going to be hard for somebody to get in front of that door. But the first thing is lock the door. Get the door locked. There's a lot of things that you can do with that. There's a couple of examples. One of the things is know which way the doors open. Do they open to the outside? Do they open to the inside? Knowing that helps you understand how to be able to prepare that door as well. And you can look, if you'll see that little spot right over here, notice he's got a belt tied around the door. For a door that won't lock, a bathroom door or something like that, get out of the front of the door and pull something like that will help hold that thing. Not only that, I like this part too. If you're going to be in there with some people, have something else that you're going to be able to hit them with when they come in. These door stops will also stop, it won't stop a door, but it'll make it a lot harder to get inside if they're driven in on that. And you can take a belt or a cable or a cord or whatever and wrap it around the return. It won't necessarily stop those doors from opening, but it'll make them a lot more difficult to open. Okay, because you can break those returns with those things as well. And then your cell phones. If you're hiding, make sure that your buzzer and your ringer are off on your phone. Last thing in the world, people say, I got it on silent. If you're hiding from somebody, you're going to be heard, right? And so let me ask you this. What would happen if you're hiding and it goes across news media? Everybody knows how quick it hits social media. Everybody's texting and everybody's talking about that thing. Who's going to call you? My mom. I tell you, my mom, I'm 59 years old. My mama's going to call me and say, honey, are you okay? I better have my ringer and my buzzer cut off on my phone. So silence that as much as possible and turn the lights off. When I say lock down, remain calm and quiet. How many of you know when people are shooting and dying that it's going to be really hard to remain calm? Okay? But there is a way to calm yourself down. Okay? It's called box breathing or combat breathing. It's where you breathe in, you hold for a few seconds, you breathe out. You hold for a few seconds, you breathe in, and you repeat that process. And what it does is it clears your mind, it disrupts tunnel vision, and it helps get your heart rate to a level to deal with what's going on so that you can think clear enough to do what needs to be done. When you look for a hiding spot, it needs to be out of view, provide protection, and not trap you to where you can't get away if you need to be. And here's the main thing, is you've got to be prepared to fight. As a last resort. But if you can't run away and you can't hide, then you need to be prepared to fight. Now a lot of y'all want to tell me, oh, I couldn't do that. I'd be too afraid to fight. But let me tell you something. When the chips are down, you'll perform like you train. We told some kids at school is that to put canned goods or food inside the classroom. Can you imagine what would happen if somebody tried to come through a door and 20 kids had 2 cans of food and they all threw them out at the same time? You think it would provide just a hair of distraction on a gunman? Just a little bit, just a second. And so I want you to think about that and keep that part in mind as just a distraction for a second, because it could be many things. And then you want to be able to control the weapon. All right? Give me a volunteer. Orange shirt right there. Stand up for me. All right. Now look at this. He's standing here, and I'm going to use my little clicker and all together. Now look at that. You know, I've got a kill shot on him. I'll just put it right there. See it? You see it? That's a kill shot. You see that? That's a miss. That's a kill shot. See it? That's a miss. Now I want y'all to look up here at my hand. That's a kill shot. That's a miss. Look at my hand, how much I'm moving. You see it, this takes just a little bit of disruption of the aiming process where you can begin to interrupt that shooter's aim and you point it in a safe direction. Floor, ceiling, whatever it might be. So imagine for just a moment that he comes in and you're close enough to him to where you can, that you're able to distract him enough to control that. Now, many different things have happened in schools along the way to where someone came into the cafeteria and just stood up with a gun and decided they were going to shoot, and somebody set it right next to them. Sometimes people died, and sometimes it didn't happen because someone was able to control the aim of the weapon. I want you to think about those for just a minute. And then I want to just throw one more thing at you, is a swarm technique. Okay? Now there's, what, 5 of you guys sitting right there? All right? Do you think that 5 of you could take this gentleman right here? Do you think if he's over here with a gun and somebody distracted him enough to where they were able to move that shooting hand out of the way, do you think the 5 of you all could probably take him down, or at least get him close to down before somebody else comes, right? Let me tell you this much here. I'm a pretty good sized fella. I went into a kindergarten class and I said, "Hey kids, give me a hug." You know what happened? 20 kindergartners knocked me on the floor. Okay? What I'm saying is this. Imagine for a moment somebody walks in, they got their mind made up they're going to shoot you. There's a distraction of some kind, and that muzzle is controlled for just a second while other people take them down. And once they're taken down, separating them from the weapon that they've got. Now don't run out holding the weapon and say, "Hey, I got his gun, I got his gun." But if you're going to go outside with that gun to separate him from it, put it in a trash can and carry the trash can outside. That way nobody will mistake that you're the person with the weapon. And then begin to think about weapons. What kind of weapons do you have? You know, we told the teachers at school because they're not allowed to have weapons there. But imagine what they could have. A desk, a chair, pen, pencils, scissors, letter openers, wasp spray, baseball bats as a trophy, canned food, a sock full of canned food. Think about all the different things you could have if you couldn't have a weapon. So when somebody comes in, you're going to do what you could do to try to stop that. And if you do have to fight, you can't run away and you can't hide, and they're right here, and you have to fight, then you're going to be aggressive. That means, if that means biting their ear off, that's what that means. If that means taking your thumb and running through their eyeball, that's what that means. You're not going to stop hitting them until they stop trying to hurt people. That makes sense? So when I say be aggressive, give them everything you've got till they stop. Some of you say I'd be too afraid to fight. This was in 2012 in Maryland. A student pulled a gun in the cafeteria, like I said, stood up, fired one shot, grabbed with the teachers, took him down right off the bat. Didn't get to do any more. One was wounded, no deaths, because a brave teacher chose to act that day. This was in Chardon, Ohio in 2012. Frank Hall ended up, he was coaching in the cafeteria, in the gym, and a kid stood up with a gun and started shooting kids in the cafeteria. Coach come out running at him. He took off and run off. You know what? They caught him a little bit later and arrested him. Coach got to be a hero. They put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Good. But if that's the reason you're doing it, be careful. Because every time there's a hero, there's always a victim too. Because the coach down in Florida did the very same thing, and he was the first victim that died. So I'm not telling you all to fight somebody. What I'm saying is when it's a last resort and they're going to try to kill you anyways, don't make it easy for them. I want you to know one thing. If you read the Cross Chronicle next week and it says that Gary Howard was killed by somebody, you make sure you'll know one thing. They had to earn that one. I'm sure not going to give him. Jesus gave his life. I'm not giving mine. I'm going to fight with all I've got until the last breath leaves my body. On the other hand, you can do nothing and get on the floor and under the table and die anyway. But I'd rather die on my feet than to live on my knees. Or worse than that, can you imagine if I could have done something and I didn't do something, and my kids, or some of the kids I love, or my family members, they died, and I didn't do something? You know what would happen to me is every day of my life, I would die all over again because I would kill myself with regret. So I'll give you a question. Would you die for your child? Everybody says yes. The answer, if you answered yes to that, you're prepared to fight back. Go find a mama bear and try to take her cub. See what happens. It won't happen. Keep in mind, law enforcement is coming. We're going to come with everything we have. We're going to do our best first to stop the killing. That means what we're going to try to do is to find the target that's doing the killing and neutralize it. That means there may be wounded people in that building, and we're not stopping to help you at that moment. Because the longer we wait to neutralize the target, the more people that will die. Once we've been able to neutralize the target, people will be coming in to stop the dying. And after that, we're going to do our very best to get over this and recover and try to make sense of life again. But make sure you show law enforcement your hands and you follow whatever their orders are along with that. And here's the thing. Most of the people that die at active shooter events do not die from the trauma of the shooting. They die from blood loss. Everybody in your whole group should know how to stop bleeding. You need to know how to pack a wound. You need to know how to do direct pressure. You need to know how to apply a tourniquet. And you need to make sure that you've got some kits in this building that you will have enough to be able to do that. I want you to imagine that somebody walks in here and they start shooting. 20 people just got shot. Just think about that for a moment. And say that the target was neutralized. Now ambulances are coming and law enforcement's coming. There's 20 victims inside this building. We're taking 5 minutes for the law enforcement to get here. And then there's probably another 2 or 3 minutes for ambulances and the first responders to get here to be able to begin to do direct pressure. And it only takes 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes to bleed out, depending on the wound. But just imagine for a moment, if you hear under the sound of my voice tonight, had the tools and equipment here, and you knew how to control bleeding, and I say, hey, come here, help me right quick. I want you to put your hand right here on this. I want you to hold it down real tight, push this gauze down. Could you do that? Yes, you could. And now I've got one victim being taken care of for a moment while we move to another. Hey, could you help me? Here, I want you to hold this pressure down real quick. Could you do that? I bet you could. Teaching people how to control bleeding. One of the things that we did at the Sheriff's Youth Academy, not this year but last year, is we brought the nursing staff from TCAT and had them to come over and teach those kids how to control bleeding. Because they may be at school one day and a shooting takes place and they'll be able to control the bleeding. There's a video on YouTube, go find it. Run, Hide, Fight. I'm not going to spend the time for you to watch it. It's about a 10-minute video. It's a good little video. It will kind of overview what I've talked about here tonight. Chaos, panic, and fear can only be minimized, never eliminated, when it's preceded by preparation and planning. What I tell everybody is this: if you don't take what I say tonight seriously, That might be the last sound you ever hear. Thank you.
Didn't Gary do a great job? Yeah. More importantly, are you wanting to do something about it? Yeah. So don't forget, Andy's got a meeting slated for after church. Pay attention to Gary too, in that not everybody, just because you say, "Oh, I've got a gun, I can carry it," that doesn't mean you're on the safety team. Let me give you my perspective. When was the first school shooting in the United States? Did you ask that question?
18.
Actually, it goes back to the 1700s.
Oh yeah, that was the one with the
Indian, actually,
yes.
Indians came in a school and shot. So we tend to think it all happened probably when? When did you really start to pay attention? Okay, Suzanne and I arrived in Lewistown, Montana in 2005. That's 19 years after their school shooting. And I knew the people who were involved. A lot of the members of the church had been in school. They were students at the school the day the shooter came in. John Moffitt is a friend, and he was the principal of the school. He had stepped down as principal of the high school and gone off to one of the elementary schools and became principal there. Really loved, super nice guy. But he was shot by the shooter. And he carried the wounds, not the physical wounds, but the emotional wounds ever since then. But one of the most telling things was a guy named Dave McCoy. Dave McCoy is a really good friend. He ran our Awana program. And Dave actually ran the Awana program for the whole city, and it was based out of our church. So he was in our church a lot. I was in his home a lot. I did not know for years that he was the first officer to go into that high school. And he told me the story. And here's a big man, a Rick Abadusky sort of big man, or a Denny sort of big man. He is that sort of big man. He's in tears 25 years after the event, talking about going into that school, not knowing what he was going to find. And he was the one that took the kid into custody and then transported him. He said it was the weirdest ride he'd ever had. The kid was weird. Interestingly enough, I even got involved a little bit. His nephews still lived in that town, the shooter's nephews, and they were a little squirrely too. One of them dated one of the girls in our youth group. So, yeah, it's just, it goes on and on and on. I think the point I'm trying to make, though, is the people I knew that were involved in that talked about it decades later, and those who were involved in the aftermath of it, who actually either got shot or arrested him or whatever, carried pain to this day. He killed one person, shot a couple others, killed one person. He did not kill the person he wanted to kill. He wanted to kill the French teacher. Instead, he kills the substitute teacher in that class, walked into the classroom, shot her in the face. You always think it's someplace remote, and I'm here to tell you it can happen right outside your back door. It can happen in your home. This is our home, and we want to do this right. Now, my experience in churches, as we're trying to ramp up and get the wheels on this bus, my experience in churches, for those of us who are old enough to know the old Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland movies, and some of you are that old. Remember, they'd say, hey, let's put on a show, and then they'd throw together a show. That's how a lot of people approach church. So you kind of throw something together thinking that's all you need. Nowadays, what was that? Security cameras, self-locking doors, you can go out. We've got those, but they're kind of ancient. And even our foyer is a consideration. That foyer is part of the design. is to be able to have outside doors, but also inside doors, so that you can have something that's locked, and you can have a barrier against somebody doing something foolish and stupid. And have we seen it? I will be honest with you. We had a scare since I've been here. We've had a scare with somebody who it was a threat. Let's just put it that way. And most of you don't know about it, and you shouldn't. But nothing happened. But it could have. Okay. So let's go ahead and stand. We'll close with prayer. We want to thank Gary for being here. He did a great job.
Thank you, Gary.
So, Father, we give you thanks for this evening. I just pray a blessing upon Gary and this new season in his life as he's retiring from preaching. Father, I doubt you're done with him. So you just see fit to take him into new paths and new opportunities wherever you see fit. We thank you for what he's doing now, and we just pray, Father, that you bless that path, that, Father, you just continue to use him in a big way. We pray a blessing upon his household, and we give you thanks also, Father, for all who are gathered here tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless. You guys have a good evening. Oh, let's clean up too, by the way.